And finally, we have the throttling configuration. When we set up the new IP address, you may remember that we added the throttling template that's listed here. If we need to make any changes to that template, we can edit it here. And you can see we have the different domain groups, the concurrent connections, messages per hour, and the throttle program. You can add additional domains into the list here or edit any that are present. Just like on the routing rule, we have a default throttle rule. This rule will get used for any domains that we don't have explicitly listed above in one of the other domain configurations. You can add new rules for new groups of domains, or edit any of the ones that are currently configured. We can also have multiple throttling templates. This allows you to create different configurations for different IPs if you have that need. Next, we have the configuration for any throttle programs. A throttle program is a way to add some additional logic into GreenArrow's throttling. First, we'll need to configure the values that we want to be set when we do go into back-off mode. We can choose the number of concurrent connections and messages per hour expressed as a fixed value or as a percentage of normal. If we set it as a fixed value, then GreenArrow will automatically just switch over to this value when we go into back-off mode. If we express it as a percentage of the normal, it's going to take a look at what we had in the throttle template and back off to this percentage of that normal configuration. Next, we need to set how often GreenArrow will evaluate whether or not we should be in back-off mode. Currently, that's expressed in seconds. I'll set it to 600 seconds or 10 minutes. Next, we need to set the triggers for what is going to put GreenArrow into back-off mode. We can have GreenArrow look at the SMTP failure percentage or the SMTP deferral percentage. Next, we need to tell GreenArrow how many SMTP attempts need to have been made to create a valid sample size to decide whether or not we're going to be in back-off mode. We want this number to be big enough that we can send small campaigns without triggering back-off mode, but we want it to be small enough so that we make sure that we do trigger back-off mode if it is going to create a problem. So with this configuration in place, GreenArrow is going to look at the failure and deferral rates on each IP address. If an IP address has sent at least 500 messages, and if either the deferrals or failures hits at least 15%, it's going to put that IP address into back-off mode. In this configuration, it'll take that IP address down to 15% of the normal max concurrent connections and max messages per hour for at least 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes, that'll be re-evaluated, and if things have changed at that time, if the failures and deferrals have gone down, then it'll switch back out of back-off mode. Next, we need to put this configuration into place. You can see we have the 10% rule already set up on some domains. We can choose which rule we want to have in place for each group of domains. If we did have any throttles that were in back-off mode, those would be reported here. If we go back to the virtual MTAs page and look at one of the IP addresses, we can see which ones have which rule and whether or not they're in back-off mode. If you want to see the details of a given rule, you can click on that here, and it'll take you to that rule, or you can access the throttle template directly to make changes. Each of those throttling configurations applies to each IP address individually. We also have the option to override any of those throttle rules by adding it directly here to the IP address. As we add domain overrides, you can see it gets crossed out here below in the inherited section. Here we can see that we've overridden the domain configuration for am.com and for aol.com. The throttle program is normal, and for these specific domains, we're using the 10% rule now only on this IP address, while aol.co.uk is still using the 15% rule. We can go back, delete the configuration, and doing that will cause GreenArrow to use the inherited rules instead of the override that we just created.